the spatial web combined with active inference AI, now you have an intelligent web that covers the entire surface of the earth. And that's going to allow us to do things, help manage our
Yeah.
climate and deal with supply chains and have a web of smart cities all interacting and talking to each other with ports and airports. We can now get to things that we've been dreaming about in science fiction. And now with the spatial web and active inference AI, developers all over the world can build it. We don't have to build it. This
Mhm.
is more like Apple's App Store, where people can just take our SDK and they can build a cardiology AI in Australia or something. You see what I mean? So we're not like OpenAI. We're not building this giant thing. We're building AI tools to enable millions of people all over the world, just like websites and apps, to build whatever AI they want to build. And then the protocol allows them all to communicate with each other. And in that way, they kind of become a unified field of knowledge. Should I call you Punch?
Yeah, you can call me Punch. That's fine. So Dan
Whatever you want.
Mapes,
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. Okay.
Punch is fine. In fact, I'll
Okay.
try to get
Start
you one of
over.
these. I'll try to get you one of these T-shirts in the next few days too. It's
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
in the age of AI, there is no way out. So, bottom line here is Dan Mapes is in the studio with us today. He is the director of the Spatial Web Foundation. He's also the founder and president of Versus AI. For those of you who are not familiar with Versus, that may or may not be fine, depending on where you are as an investor or as a AI enthusiast or a leader in an organization. But that's why we're here today. So, Dan, welcome to No Way Out. Good to see you.
Thanks, Punch. Great to see you.
Hey, so I'm thinking I'm going to do something a little different with you today. And what I like to do is give you a little background on how we came to have this conversation today. I want to go back about 4 or 5 years, share with you some insights. And if I share anything that I shouldn't share, we could always edit that out later. You'll need to tell me. But I want to give you some background, and I think it's going to start might be a good foundation for our conversation today. It's going to be pretty unique. So hold on, everybody. Going back about 4 or 5 years, I'm a product of a culture war known as the war on drugs. So going back to the 70s, we found out that, hey, psychedelics are bad, stay away from them. I went into naval aviation. I crawled into a bottle at the age of about 22, 23. We drank a lot of alcohol. We've had a lot of problems. We have a veteran community that has a mental health crisis. We're losing 22 to 44 veterans a day to suicide. It's unacceptable.
Wow.
So I want to take us to about 2019, 2020, maybe 2021. And I came across this book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. And you may be asking, how does this connect to artificial intelligence? We'll get to that. I promise you that. It'll be pretty fun. So I read this book. I come across this theory by a gentleman whose name is Robin Carhart Harris. And he talks about the snow globe, that you shake up the snow globe and you get higher entropy, you get more disorder, and you get these counterfactuals, and it's pretty amazing. And he called it the entropic brain hypothesis. And he also has another one called reduced beliefs under psychedelics. Okay, so what does that have to do with anything? Well, if you dive a little bit deeper and you look at who he worked with on that and the theories he borrowed from that and built on, he built on a theory a principle called the free energy principle, right? An active inference. And that's by Carl Friston. So long story longer, I hold space for one of my friends down in Mexico. I get to see the power of ibogaine and 5-MeO-DMT. And in just a few weeks' time, we're going to see on Netflix a movie called In Waves and War that features a lot of the folks that are working on psychedelic assisted therapies for veterans down in Mexico. Anyway, I see the power of that. I see that, hey, this culture war that we had in the 70s may have been wrong, that we need to embrace this new way of thinking, potentially a new way of thinking, where psychedelics are useful in some contexts and maybe not so much in recreational use, but that's, I'm not here to tell you to do them or not to do them. I'm just saying there's value in them. Anyway, I see the power of ibogaine, 5-MeO-DMT. I dive deeper into the entropic brain hypothesis. I start looking for organizations that understand active inference, the free energy principle, and I can find very, very few. This is about 2020. And I keep looking, I'm like, wait a minute, this lines up quite well with what we know as observe, orient, decide, act, the real OODA loop, which is built off of physics, neuroscience, biology, and of course, cybernetics. And there's a lot of connections between what John Boyd was looking at, what we talk about on the show, and what Carl Friston mathematically came up with in his free energy principle. So I keep looking for organizations, and I come across two. Now, this is going to be kind of a interesting point. The first one's is in financial markets. It's a company by the name of Hedgeye. Hedgeye is using John Boyd's observer wait decide act loop, and they're using Mandelbrot's geometry. So geometry has a big part in a lot of things that we're going to talk about here shortly, I'm sure. But I dive a little bit deeper in that. I go up to Connecticut. I get to hang out with these guys. I'm like, these are my type of people talking about complex adaptive systems, neuroscience, coaching, new processes, implicit guidance control. And I get invited up to go do a TV show with them, right? What do I talk about? I talk about the free energy principle and active inference. Well, here's the secret thing that most people may not know. One of the founders, and this may or may not be true anymore, I'm not sure where this is at the moment, became the chairman of the board for Versus AI. Michael Bloom, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, yeah. So, just out of coincidence. So the second thing, it is a small world. And the second thing I was looking for is who in the world is doing this FEP active inference thing? Who's looking at it with regard to leadership, technology, whatever it may be. And I came across your company called Versus AI, and this thing called the Spatial Web, right? And I'm like, what is this? So I bought the book, The Spatial Web. I believe it's about 6-7 years old now. Is that right? Yeah. You go through.
It held up well. It held up well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I started reading it. It starts talking about geometry, right? Spatial relationships. And I'm like, wait a minute, 3 dimensions. Where in the world have I seen 3 dimensions before? Dogfighting, air combat maneuvering. In fact, you go back and you look at the origins of John Boyd's work in the OODA loop. It started with spatial relationships, understanding that it's not just 3 dimensions, it's 4 dimensions, right? It's time. So we start getting into the geometry. I start looking around some more. I find these folks that talk about sacred geometry and, of course, the connection to the psychedelic assisted therapy. What's going on there? There's some connections to the brain. There's ideas that as above, so below, all these things. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is all about flow states, right? Peak performance and things like that. So I came across your work, what you're doing at Versus, and I knew I had to have you on the show. It took some time. Accidentally, our 9th guest on the show was Dr. Hippolito. She came on to talk about the free energy principle and active inference. We've had several people from neuroscience with neuroscience backgrounds come on and talk about that in their context for markets. One of them being Patrick Skotanis, who worked with Carl Friston as well. I've done a little bit of work with Stephen Kotler, who's done work with Carl Friston on flow, intuition, type 0 and type 1 cognition. So that's a lot of me spewing information out to you and the world. So I want to have you take those insights and kind of take us back to where the spatial web came from, what it is, and of course, what you're doing with Carl Friston and active inference.
Wow, that's a lot. Let's see where to begin here. I mean, obviously, let's take a minute and just honor Dr. Carl Friston. I mean, he's going to go down in history as one of the great minds of the 21st century. And Carl is a professor at University College London. And a lot of people don't realize that that's where DeepMind came from. That was also at University College London because UCL is a big neuroscience center. So DeepMind spun out from UCL, a bunch of PhDs at UCL were working in neural nets, spun out and launched a company called DeepMind back in, 2012, somewhere in there. And then Google, I think, bought them in 2014 for $500 million. And so that's where Google DeepMind came from. So that was from the computer science side of the house. But the neuroscience side of the house is actually looking at wetware, actually looking at the brain itself, not just computer chips. And so neural nets are pattern recognition machines. They're machines. They're not intelligent. They're a machine that mimics intelligence, but it's a wonderful labor-saving device. A document that might take me 20 hours to write, using GPT 4 or 5, I can write it in 5 minutes. I may want to edit it for a couple of hours because it will hallucinate and have errors. But in general, it's a huge, huge time-saving device. But Dr. Friston was down the hall, and he's kind of developing his understanding of how the mind is developing. And he's noticing a couple of things. One, let's use 100,000 watts to answer a simple question, whereas the human brain uses 20 watts. Wow, that's something different. Secondly, how is it that a child can go from the ages of 1 to 5 to 10 to 15, evolving its intelligence without ever having to go into the hospital and get a new chip upgrade? So there's no GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT grow every minute, every day.
Hmm.
So as he attacked that problem back in the early 2000s, he discovered the free energy principle. And the free energy principle is, you could argue that there's two terms that you'll hear a lot when you're looking at advanced artificial intelligence. And really, you could call it the next generation of AI after neural nets. So everything OpenAI, Grok, all these people are running on 40-year-old technology that Dr. Jeffrey Hinton really helped develop in the 80s and 90s, along with Jan LeCun. Hinton then became head of Google Brain, and Jan LeCun became head of AI at Meta. And so they were looking at how to take these pattern recognition machines and get them more and more accurate. And they realized by making them bigger with more chips and more data, then they get more accurate. And maybe you can just do that till the end of time, and then you'll have AGI. You'll have a smarter than a human machine. But Dr. Carl Friston was going like, hey, that doesn't seem like the right approach. Why don't we learn from nature
Hmm.
how intelligence is evolving through species and within a person. And so you could argue that intelligence has evolved even in the human tradition from Stone Age to now, but certainly through the whole hominid line into Neanderthals to us and that kind of thing. But then even myself, being a young boy growing up, and now after going through college and into adulthood, and then being an inventor and traveling the world and things. I mean, how is it that our intelligence is growing larger over time? So
Hmm.
I still know the things I knew when I was 5, but now I know things that I didn't know when I was 5. And even some of the things I thought I knew when I was 5 were incorrect. I've now adapted them. So secondly, not only does the brain use a lot less energy, but it self evolves. You don't need to reprogram it. You don't need to put training data into it. It's using in senses. It's called embodied intelligence.
Hmm.
So it's not just a machine in a room that we're loading with information and then asking the big machine to answer a question. It's more like a organism living in the world and looking at the world in real time. And so if I ask ChatGPT, where's the teacup in this room? No idea what I'm talking about.
Right.
It might go, well, teacups are generally 87% in the kitchen, but
Mm.
actually the teacup's sitting right in front of me, and I just open my eyes and look. So it only takes me 20 watts to answer the question because I just look around the room with my eyes and, oh, there's the teacup right there, Uh, ChatGPT has to look through all of this data about houses and teacups and everything to answer a
Yeah.
question like that. So Friston immediately attacked the problem. And what he discovered is that an organism living in the world has to survive.
Right.
And if it makes mistakes, it will probably be eaten. An antelope can't just walk over to the pond in Africa and have a drink of water very casually and walk away. It's gone in a second.
Hmm.
So antelopes have learned over time that if they go very early in the morning when the lions are sleeping, they can probably get a nice long drink that'll hold them. And then if they get really desperate later in the day, they'll still go to get a drink, but they're very careful. They're looking like around all the time, looking for any danger. And then they just dip their head, drink, look, and then off they go. And so they're learning techniques to survive. And so they're building an understanding of the world. The lions come in the middle of the day, and the antelopes can come early in the morning, and we won't be bothered. And so that is called a world model. You're building an understanding of the world around you. And a 1-year-old kind of models the house. 2-year-old goes the yard. Once they get their bike at 6 or whatever, they can ride around the neighborhood. They're modeling. Their world model is growing. And the model isn't only geospatial, it's also psychological. If I do this, it makes mom mad, or things like that. And so we're modeling the world constantly every day. Even this conversation will cause your world model to shift a little bit and my world model to shift a little bit.
Hmm.
And people listening to it will do it. And so that's how we're evolving our consciousness, our understanding of the world.
So I
So
want to make it.
how would we do how
I
would
want
we
to make
do
a
that
point.
mathematically?
Yeah.
Well, let me just finish the thing. So then his question was, well, then how would we do that mathematically? And so he came up with two things. One's called the free energy principle, and the other is called active inference intelligence. And so you could say that the free energy principle is the why. Why do we, how does this work? What's going on? And active inference is the how. How do we restructure our thinking and our world model so that it grows? Well, if you understand the why and the how, now you can mathematically model that. And once you can mathematically model that, then you can turn it into code. And that's what we just done. We just spent $140 million.
Hmm.
And Carl's chief scientist and all of his top PhD students are the AI department. And we've just spent the last 5, 6 years developing this thing and evolving it. And now it's done. We just finished it in May of this year, and we're slowly rolling it out. And so it's been an exciting journey. Next generation of AI, a big deal. And it does everything that the older generation could do with 1/100th of the energy, 100 times the accuracy. And then it can do all kinds of things the old generation can't do, like real time data and things like that. So it's a nice moment in history. And we owe a great debt of gratitude to Carl for coming up with the free energy principle and active inference. And then what a great team we have at Versus that's been able to take that and turn it into a commercial product.
Well, I have so many questions. I want to start with the world model, and I'll give you my point of view. A world model does not mean I understand everything in the world, right? And I think some people take it as that. It's just I think an agent can have a world model and just understand this room that I'm standing in at the moment. Is that true? Is that how it kind of works?
So a world model is any understanding you have. A 2-year-old has this big of a world model,
Hmm.
and an 8-year-old has this big of a world model. I mean, so yeah, you can have, and as you said, you can have very specific world models. Like if you're a cardiologist, you might have a very specific knowledge of cardiology that I don't have. I have a maybe very lightweight thing about cardiology and heart health, but a cardiologist is they could build a complete server for that. So you're right. So world models, there's a general world model that we have, an understanding of the world with gravity and
Hmm.
light and the sun comes up in the east and things like that. But that world model is evolving constantly, and science is causing it to change. Our experiences are causing it to change. Travel is causing it to change. Conversations like this are causing it to change. So that's a way to think about it. But I think you put your finger on something very specific, and that is OpenAI and ChatGPT and Grok and Meta and all these others that are building these LLMs are building a giant data set
Hmm.
of like every word that's ever been put on the internet and magazines and other kind of thing. And then you get to query it, but it doesn't actually have a world model. It just has words about the world in there. So we don't need to have, as you point out, we don't need to have a complete model of the world ourselves. Science is building models of the world. We're learning from it as we need. But there's specific models of the world that are being used for different things in medicine, space exploration,
Hmm.
manufacturing, whatever it is, pharmaceuticals. And so these are very specific world models. And so that's another thing that Carl noticed is that why build a giant thing that requires billions of watts to run? Why not build a number of specific things and have them very specialized and curated around cardiology, around space exploration, around
Hmm.
education, whatever subject matter, and then let them talk to each other. And so that's what the spatial web is. So what we've learned on the internet is if we make a protocol, the first protocol was TCP/IP that enabled email. It allowed every computer in the world to talk to every other computer in the world by just having an IP address, and really got cool new approaches to sending messages across the network. And then Tim came along with HTTP and HTML and said, "Hey, let's do fully formatted pages with
Hmm.
HTML so we can locate things on the page, and HTTP to link them all." And then the spatial web says, hey, why don't we? So now we have a web of communication first, then a web of information. Why don't we have a web of intelligence? And so that's really what the spatial web is. It brings in a web of intelligence with, instead of 2D pages, three-dimensional geospatial environments.
Hmm.
So that the spatial web combined with active inference AI, now you have an intelligent web that covers the entire surface of the earth. And that's going to allow us to do things, help manage our climate and deal with supply chains and have a web of smart cities all interacting and talking to each other with ports and airports. So that's kind of the exciting moment here. We can now get to things that we've been dreaming about in science fiction. And now with the spatial web and active inference AI, developers all over the world can build it. We don't have to build it. This
Mhm.
is more like Apple's App Store. We're delivering a platform. People can just take our SDK and they can build a cardiology AI in Australia or something. You see what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not, we're not like OpenAI. We're not building this giant thing. We're building AI tools to enable millions of people all over the world, just like websites and apps, to build whatever AI they want to build. And then the protocol allows them all to communicate with each other. And in that way, they kind of become a unified field of knowledge. So that's kind of a quick way of looking at the overall thing and why this is such an important moment.
So let me try this on you. In complex adaptive systems thinking, we learned that it's the interactions between the agents that matter. The quality of the agents is matters less than the protocols, the interactions. In fighter aviation and commercial aviation, we learned that protocols, what we call crew resource management, teaming skills matter more than the quality of the agent. Same thing is true in sport. You can have um, an average group of players beat phenomenal players if they're interacting at a higher level, if they have more flow, if you will. So what we're seeing is that the protocol that you're talking about is kind of like connecting these, I'll call them agents with OODA loops for now, but they're agents with a world model, which we call orientation. They have sensory states that access the external world, and they have active states where they can act on that world, which is the same as OODA loop, where you have observation and you have action. So those represent the boundary states, and you put a boundary around them. So what I think the way I look at this is you're copying nature. You're just saying, hey, if we do what nature does,
Ecosystems.
yeah. And we may be wrong with FEP may change over the next 20, 30 years, but what we know today is the best we know right now, right? And that's all we're
Well,
saying is,
even if FEP doesn't change, a child doesn't have to change its FEP.
mhm,
Just by us taking in more data, it just becomes more aware and turns into an adult. So FEP doesn't have to change. E equals MC squared doesn't have to change. This is a principle in nature. So that's the great thing. I mean, think about it from an inventor's point of view. There's two ways to invent. One is to hack something together. Hey, here's a wheel. Here's a wheel. Let's make a bicycle.
yep,
There's another way to invent, which is let science do its magic and then use that result of that science to invent. So the Bernoulli principle is a good example. Bernoulli principle, we used to, you ask any normal person, they think an airplane flies through the air because the
no,
jet engines push the wings this way and it surfs the air. No, it's because, it's the shape of the wing and creates a negative lift. But we didn't know the Bernoulli principle for a long time. And then we did. And then now you can apply, once you know the math of the Bernoulli principle and you know the weight of the plane, the actual wings and everything are almost designed by the Bernoulli principle. This is how big the wing has to be. This is how much thrust you have to lift that off the ground. So if you have a science foundation and then on top of it, then you build your engineering applications, that's a really good solid approach. And that's what we've done here. Carl represents kind of the peak of European scientific thought. And it's odd, too, that so much of AI comes out of England. I mean, Alan Turing
mhm,
was in England at Bletchley Park when they built the computer to crack the German cipher. And he's really the first person to kind of coin artificial intelligence. And then Tim Berners-Lee, the English guy,
mhm,
developed the World Wide Web, and
wow,
Carl now with active inference. And so, of course, even DeepMind is based in England. And so we really have a great tradition in England around advanced computing architectures. And then we put that together with Silicon Valley entrepreneurship and engineering. So it's a nice combination of a good scientific foundation with good engineering on top of it. Really, what's allowed Versus to have the breakthroughs that it's having. And if you go to our website, you'll see the breakthroughs. That we're beating everybody at the Atari games. The latest one was on robotics. They have a test for robots called Habitat. And probably the best score on Habitat might have been, I don't know, 50 something prior to us. But the way that neural nets work is you have to pre-train them. You have to
mhm.
give them millions and millions of instances of possible things they might encounter. If they then encounter something they don't have in their training data, they're kind of flummoxed. They don't have a reasoning ability to adapt. So all the different robotic systems up until now have been based on neural nets, and they don't do very well, but they do better and better over time. But we just took the test here a couple of months ago, and we just wanted to make a point. So we didn't do any pre-training at all. No, no pre-training. So very costly to pre-train, millions of dollars to build all these millions of instances and train the neural nets for the robot and all that. No pre-training, just pure active inference. Robot comes into the situation, solves the thing, scores something like a 75, and beats everybody with
Yeah.
no cost, no pre-training, nothing. So that's so radical this new technology is. It really is a tiny fraction of the cost and a multiple capability, and then the ability to do things that we've never been able to do before because it just unlocks new possibilities.
So you brought up a couple places where your creativity or novelty emerges from. One is your analogy of breaking things apart, like snowmobiles. Putting parts together of different things and science. Let me ask you this: is there a third one, potentially access to maybe a grand consciousness, or the Akashic records, or Akashic field, or is there another way to get? And this might be a leading question because I'm really curious. How did you come up with this idea of the spatial web? What was going through your mind, 15, 20 years ago?
Honestly, I thought 1,000 people would attack it. It's so obvious. It's so
Mm.
obvious. So here
Hmm.
we are in 1995, and the World Wide Web is blowing up.
Yeah.
And so it's a 2D web. It's a web of web pages. That's why it's Facebook and PageRank. It's pages, right? HTML, markup language for pages. This is bold. This is italic. Put the picture here. It's a markup language for pages. But at the same time, I'm a computer game designer at that time. I'm working on Tony Hawk Pro Skater and other big games,
Mm.
and they're all in 3D. And so we've got now 25 years of 3D computer gaming on Xboxes and PlayStations, and 25 years of a 2D web because the web can't handle 3D. It's too heavy.
Hmm.
But it's pretty obvious to a technologist that bandwidth is getting bigger, the chips are getting faster, the 3D web. Well, it was so obvious, even in 1995. Oh, we only have a 2D web because we can't build a 3D web. So you could argue that from 1970, when the internet just first began, we've always wanted the spatial web. We
Hmm.
just couldn't get there because the ships couldn't handle it. And so the only thing we could do in 1970 was unformatted little text files to each other called email. And then as soon as we had more bandwidth, Tim said, hey, now we can download pages. But if you were around in 1995, I mean, you could actually watch a page download with really slow internet. Now, of course, we're watching Netflix and playing Fortnite and everything online. And so we had the bandwidth for 3D. So really, the 3D web is just what we always wanted from the very beginning. Now we have the web of the internet of everything because now every building can be online. So that gives you smart cities, supply chains, forests, monitoring the coral reefs. I don't know, ocean temperature. We'll have what's called a digital twin. Right
Hmm.
now, everybody's working to build a digital twin of the entire planet. And once you've got that digital twin of the planet with satellites updating it in real time, now you can put active inference in there and it help manage things. Let's just say that that's been the dream of humanity for a very long time, and
Yeah.
now because of the changes in chips and the internet speeds and things like that, it's realizable. It was so to me, it was so obvious we were going to need a 3D web. And my partner Gabriel Renee and I have been working on projects together for a long time. So we just looked at each other and went, "Well, here we are in 2018. Seems like a good time to start. It won't really have the bandwidth until the early 2020s, but you don't wait." It's like a surfer, you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
wait till the wave is here to get paddling. You start paddling and catch the wave. And so we could see the wave coming. We got early 20s. We're going to have enough bandwidth, so let's start coding now. And so we started the Spatial Web Project in 2018, and now it's just been ratified by the IEEE as a new global standard in May, just 4 months ago.
So speaking about or talking about surfboards, you you're a fan of peak performance, and I'm pretty sure you're a fan of flow and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work and understanding flow states and access to novelty. And I brought up Stephen Kotler's work with Carl Friston on intuition. So I want to go a little bit deeper with you if you don't mind. So you're And you talk about consciousness. You talked about that many years ago. There's a YouTube video out there of you talking about it and how things are connected in reality, and how the sidewalk is may or may not be real. And once you start getting down to the atomic level and things like that. So I know flow. The answer you gave me was punch. It just was so obvious. No, I think you were surfing. I think you were in a flow state. I think you had something going on when you came up with this. Or do you remember where that was, or the conversations that started, or what you were
Oh, no,
doing?
I think you're right. I mean, I meditate. I mean, there's no doubt things like that really help keep your mind clear because normally we get too involved in the day-to-day dramas of the default reality, and things like meditation and other things like that help you step back from it all and just kind of get a broader view of life, of time, of reality. And I think that probably does help in the creative process, no doubt about it. But I can't imagine a life without meditation. It's
Yeah.
such a saving grace because daily life is so hypnotic. All the dramas, all the problems, you can just get caught in them, and next thing you know, you're just like inside the video game instead of playing it. Certainly meditation practices, and I love Advaita Vedanta and Buddhism and all the great traditions that help us step free from that. Rumi's great work in the Sufi tradition and these kinds of things. So I think those are very, very helpful. They're kind of the right brain to our left brain. The left brain, is all the university type education stuff and daily problem solving, and then the right brain would be more like meditation and poetry and music and things like that. So I think having a balance between those things is really great. I mean, I just kind of intuitively went for that. We have
Okay.
a right and left hand. Why not use them both?
So humanness, getting back to being humans, I think the direction that our current AI is taking us is removing some of our capability. I believe that AI that you're talking about could actually bring us back to becoming more human and allowing us to do things that we normally wouldn't be able to do without technology. So I'll give you an example. In sports, I see great application for this, for improving individual performance, creating agents that look at individuals, understanding their genetics, their past, nutrition, how much they sweat when they work out, during a game or whatever it may be, the way they shoot a basketball. That's going to change the nature of the game here soon. That's how I'm kind of looking at your AI, active inference AI anyway. But that's just one piece of it. The other piece is in organizations. I just read that maybe LLMs aren't having the impact that many people thought they had. There's something known as work slop. People are creating work for others by using LLMs. That's getting away from being human. That's just kind of outsourcing your work to a machine to have somebody else do the work, and have your machine talk to my machine, and we'll meet up for lunch sometime virtually, right? We need to get back to being social creatures. And I think what I like about FEP and active inference and what you're doing is I believe it's going to take us back to being more human, our humanness. Any thoughts on that?
Those are really big ideas, Punch. I mean, no doubt about it. It will change. If we look back at human history, the latest findings are that humans like us have been on the planet about 200,000 years. And so 90% of that time, up until 10,000 years ago, we were hunter gatherers. I mean, our primary tool was a spear, and, very simple lives, basically chasing protein around and then picking up, finding and picking unpoisonous berries and other things to eat. And so that was really our life, and that's the deep background of human beings living in small tribes of maybe 30, 50, 80 people. You couldn't have a very big tribe because you'd eat all the food.
Hmm.
And then you kind of had to follow the animals too, as well. So you were pretty nomadic usually. And so, and then we discovered agriculture really after the last ice age, around 10, 12,000 years ago. Um, and suddenly, instead of having food scarcity, we had food security, or at least vastly in ways we never could have before. And that allowed the growth of people could stay in one place. Suddenly, they needed mathematics to count how many jars of olive oil you had and how many bushels of wheat I had. Next thing you know, you got civilization really popping and huge empires growing, the Persian Empire, Greek, Rome, and all these things. And all just on the back of that one breakthrough into understanding that we could grow our food and we could breed animals, and suddenly we would have an abundance of them.
Hmm.
And then the next big breakthrough was 500 years ago with the dawn of the industrial age or the machine age. I mean, Gutenberg invented the printing press and used to take a scribe 3 years to handwrite a Bible.
Hmm.
And so they would be commissioned. That's $150,000 in minimum wage in today's money. I mean,
Yeah.
they would be commissioned by a royal family or something, and not many people read. And his life was pretty simple. You were generally just apprenticed for your work and worked on a farm, or you were apprenticed to the blacksmith or whatever. And suddenly, the printing press came out in 1457. There were hardly any books in circulation in Europe at the time. And by 1500, less than 50 years, there were 20 million books in circulation in Europe. And then the 1500s was the Renaissance. It just an explosion of ideas and philosophy and art and science and new governance models and the Reformation. I mean, just like huge change in the next 100 or so years. Great age of discovery. People will start sailing ships all around the world, and we live in the world where we live in that world now. That's the industrial age, we call it, or the machine age, or whatever you like. But now that's ending right now. It's ending right now, and everybody can feel it. It's like, oh my God, what are we stepping into? There's a whole new thing coming in here with computers and networks and virtual worlds and artificial intelligence. And well, it's as radical as the machine age was to the ag age. Now this new intelligence age is that radical to the industrial age. And so I think everybody's feeling that, and it's exciting and terrifying because we're creatures of habit. For
Hmm.
250,000 years, we just hunted animals every day and ate food and survived. And we like things to be predictable. And when we go through these big renaissance moments, and we're definitely in a renaissance moment right now, the pace of change is so fast that it kind of overwhelms us a little bit with change. But it's like what happened after the last Renaissance. Oh my God, a world opened up. You can bring anybody here from 1400, and they're going like, "You guys are
Yeah.
living in science fiction, airplanes and electric lights. So what is all this stuff?" And so we're those people. We're like the people in 1400. If we could go out to 2100 and see what we're going to create, we'd be going like, "Oh my God, our best science fiction wasn't as good as this." Probably lifespans will go up to what, 150. I mean,
Wow.
mass abundance, super wealth, disease pretty much wiped out. Probably interplanetary at that point.
Hmm.
So, I think we're on the verge of something really, really extraordinary, and we don't really have to overcome the limitations of the industrial age. It just gets solved by this explosion of all this intelligence, and there'll be a billion robots running around the planet here in 5 or 10 years.
Wow.
Robots right now, I'm amazed at the price of robots. Humanoid robots right now, you can buy them for under $10,000.
Mm.
That's today. What's it going to be like in 2030? I mean, billions of robots, and they're going to just be able to, every house will probably have a robot just like they have a car now.
Just like the Jetsons when we were growing up, right? Rosie's.
Just like the Jetsons, we're heading into the Jetson world, and it's going to cause us to change pretty much everything, just like the last Renaissance. Government will change, education will change, medicine will change, social relations will change. Maybe we won't have to live in big cities so much concentrated because you want to be near your job. You don't want to have to commute for an hour. If there are no jobs, or if you're remote working, you can live wherever you like. And so we might get more of a web of communities rather than these giant cities that we're living in now. So if you go out to 2100 and look back, you'll be able to see the change really clearly. Right now, we kind of can intuit it, but we can't see it really clearly. But clearly, massive, massive change is coming. And the great thing about human beings is they're the most adaptable animal ever
Yep.
created on the planet. That's why there's
Yeah.
8 billion of us. So we'll adapt and we'll learn and we'll understand how to use various new technologies and tools to take care of everybody. And because of mass abundance, probably there'll be so much abundance around that no one will get left behind in this next round.
So let's talk about current assumptions in AI, namely massive data centers and high energy requirements. And we've already talked about if you look at the brain being, if the brain is an expensive organ, it just reduces its energy spend by creating predictions, right? So that's what makes your technology powerful as you follow the ecological approach, the natural intelligence approach. And you see that if we create predictions, we can actually, in these world models, we can reduce the energy required for a agent to our system. Now, current assumptions are we need tons of nuclear power, we need lots more energy, we need all these things, we need big data centers. Does your technology and your approach crush those assumptions?
No, it doesn't. It
Okay.
does. It does. It does, and it doesn't. There's a yes and a no to that. So, if we look back at what happened in the late '90s, we had this same exact thing we're happening right now with AI. We had the dot-com explosion. People were just throwing money at any website. Hey,
Mhm.
pets.com, weddingplanner.com. You get a million. You get a million.
Yeah.
Now it's you get a billion. You get a billion. And then it reached a bubble, and then it like deflated.
Mhm.
In the process, they were throwing in fiber optic cables and all kinds of things. So when the thing crashed, the best survived, Amazon and Google and
Mhm.
great companies that are around today. But what's great is the infrastructure also was needed for these other things going forward. So all the fiber optic got laid and everything, we used it. I think the same thing is going to happen. We're going to have a huge LLM crash. There's only going to be 3 or 4 LLM companies here in the next 3 years or 4 years, probably, because
Mhm.
OpenAI's got $100 billion to play with, so they can survive the winter, and many of the smaller companies will get weeded out. People like Meta will survive because they have money from Facebook, and Google will survive because they have money from Google, and the Chinese DeepSeek and people like that will survive. But right now we have over 1,000 AI companies, and probably 95% of them will all be gone in 3 or 4 years. But because they're building these giant data centers, they won't be used for AI. You don't need them if you're using active inference because you have
Mhm.
millions of little data models all over the world, and they're all just communicating with each other like the World Wide Web. So it's just an extension of the web. You can run onto the cloud. You can run an AI on a smartphone with active inference. So it won't be the AI that's using those data centers. It'll be computer graphics. Now you got to remember,
Oh, okay.
NVIDIA started as a game chip. You really bought NVIDIA boards to make your games run faster. Well, what's the spatial web about? Digital twinning of the world,
Mm.
metaverses, digital twins, smart cities. I mean, all the great IP in the world. I mean, instead of going to see the movie Avatar in five
Mhm.
years, you'll just go hang out on Avatar and with your headset on and live with the Navi and learn how to speak Navi and fly the
Wow.
fly the pterodactyls and do all the things. So the metaverse and the digital twin world is coming in with AI, and that uses a lot of horsepower to do all that computer graphics.
Okay.
So I think those data centers will be used for that, not for AI. But we cut down the need for. We don't need data centers at all for what we're doing.
Okay, so there is a little bit of a truth in that. Now, let me ask you this: why is it so challenging for people to wrap their head around this paradigm shift between, I'll call it a closed system LLM, to what this open system active inference is, right? I mean, when you have to talk when you talk to leaders about this, do you see them struggling to understand the difference between what things are what's happening today and what is on the horizon?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, one way is, of course, LLMs have been amazing. I mean, I use them
Yeah.
every day. They're incredible. I mean, just put a prompt in and you can get a
Hmm.
full video out. It's remarkable. So, so that's so exciting for most people. They don't need more than that. So they're not
Okay.
looking for beyond that. Now NASA and other big corporations and smart cities, they need more than that. They're very aware of what we're doing. But also, what's happened in the last year is we're starting to see the limitations of the large language models. They're
Hmm.
good for making content, but you probably need a human in the loop to edit it. So when I get a 20-page report back on the history of Los Angeles or the design of the new airport or whatever, I still have to read through it. And it's still got errors in it. They're called hallucinations or just factual errors, even. So I've got to have a human in the loop to edit it before I publish it. And the same thing with a video. I might want to edit the video a bit. No, that didn't come out. The person has 6 fingers, whatever. And so as long as you have a human in the loop, LLMs are fine, and they're great productivity tools. But 95% of what we want AI to do is fully autonomous. It's
Hmm.
moving things in smart cities. Think about that. There's 40 layers of data in a smart city: electric grid, traffic, emergency services, you name it, and they all have to be coordinated. And so there's just billions of bits flying back and forth. What about global banking? What about
Hmm.
global supply chains and transfers of title and all kinds of stuff? ports, airports. I mean, these you can't have a human in the loop. Things are moving too fast. So we're the next generation that does the accurate, embodied, real time AI that doesn't require a human editor.
So I'm kind of curious when it comes to building those world models, and let me just go back a moment. We talk about strategy. When we help organizations with their strategy, we ask them to take a model of their world. There's mapping techniques that allow us to do that. Generally, most corporations don't want to do that. They're like, well, I just want a mission statement. I want a vision statement. I want a 40-page PowerPoint presentation, and that's what I want to execute on. And we argue that, hey, look, the best way to build a strategy is to understand your external environment. How do you map it? So my question to you is, are there solid mapping techniques that you recommend, or how do you recommend organizations get ready for creating these world models that look at the functions of things and the interactions between them as they develop both human and agent models where humans and agents can work together? Are you looking at any of that?
You're really good, Punch. I mean, it's exactly this is now the new skill.
Okay.
Exactly right there. And so, what's great about active inference and the free energy principle is you don't have to have the most accurate world model when you start. You just need a good, solid, small world model, and it will learn and grow itself, self-evolve forever after that. So that's one good piece of news. If you look at LLMs, they're static models. You build them, and
Hmm.
they're static. They're frozen. And then that's why you have to wait when they finish GPT-2. Then you got to wait 2 years for GPT-3, 2 years for GPT-4, then 2 years for GPT-5, because they're rebuilding the model. Whereas with active inference, it's just kind of self evolving every day. And you never do this retraining and rebuilding a thing. And so that's one good news right there. And
Hmm.
secondly, then you let people that have domain knowledge, your specialist in cardiology, let's say you Cleveland Clinic is going to build a cardiology AI. Well, now you've got access. They're like websites. So
Hmm.
now your Meta AI, your personal assistant AI, which is like your Jarvis, has access to every AI on the internet, right? It's a meta AI. It's aware of everything out there. And so when you have a question around the diet related to heart health, it might query
Hmm.
the AI at the Cleveland Clinic, and it might have a validity rating higher than any other cardiology AI, almost the way websites do now, or apps. So the great thing about the way the World Wide Web works is it's decentralized, and so we generally have a swing from central to decentral, from central to decentral. So computers started out with big mainframe computers. IBM was the biggest company, and you
Hmm.
plugged everything into the mainframe. If the mainframe went down, all the terminals went down, and that's why you'd go to the bank. They go, sorry, the computer's down at the moment. So the internet was a way of solving for that. Let's get rid of the central computer and let's just create a web of computers. And we'll give every computer an IP address, and then they can send messages to each other all over the world. And then the same thing when the same thing happened in the '90s. AOL got really huge. They got so big they bought Time Warner.
Hmm.
And it was a
Hmm.
big central information hub with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, stock quotes, mail, everything, all on your AOL CD that you paid a monthly subscription for. Then Tim Berners-Lee released the web protocols, and one of the people at the New York Times raised his hand and said, "Hey, uh, we're on AOL, but we don't see the customer. They're AOL's customer,
Hmm.
even though they're reading the New York Times. If we have our own website, we can run our own ads and have our own subscribers and do everything that we like to do as well, and we'll have a direct contact with our users." And so everybody migrated away from the central system to a
Hmm.
decentralized system. That's now I think we have 4 billion websites all over the world, built by probably 100 million people or more.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no company has 100 million people, and I mean I think Microsoft, as big as they are, is under 100,000. So to say to have a company like OpenAI, which has got like I don't know 4 or 5 thousand people, and we're going to build an AI for the whole world. No, 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 no. Get out of here.
Yeah.
No, no, no. Decentralize. Here's a tool, people. People in Malaysia are building AIs for Malaysia. I mean, AIs
Hmm.
for farming in Japan are going to be very different than AIs for farming in Kenya. They got to be done hyper local. So now we've got a hyper local AI. We're not building the damn thing. We're building the tools like Apple in the App Store or like WordPress for or Shopify for the website. You just grab Shopify and you can make your own store and load it up and go. And so we build SDKs that allow people all over the world to then download their knowledge into these AI domain models and then share them with the world. And they can charge for them and whatever. Just very similar to the World Wide Web. So it's a World Wide Web of intelligence now instead of a World Wide Web of information.
Do they have to share? Let's say there's something that's proprietary. Let's say I want to build a way to understand the stock market. I don't want to share it with the world.
Oh,
Can I
no, of
protect
course,
it?
yeah, no,
Okay.
it's just like a web. You have a
Okay.
website. You have to be a member, maybe.
Mhm.
You have total control over your AI.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
you can
the
make it available. You can make it available for a price. You can only you have to be over 21 or whatever it is. You see what I mean? You have
yeah,
all those
yeah.
rules. It's just like the World Wide Web.
Okay. So the idea of a distributed or federated approach is really like the concept of team of teams that everybody got excited about 10 years ago, which is actually built upon something we learned 30 years ago in the military. And that is you want to have decisions made locally. You want to push information to the decision makers. The same thing is true when it comes to building in a high performance organization. You don't want to centralize all that. You want to decentralize it. So it's interesting. I was just having a quick conversation with Dr. Bray about this, that I think that this approach is actually going to allow organizations to become more agile, more adaptive, because they have to learn from the technology. It's basically a mirror that says, here's what we're borrowing from human. You ought to learn how to do this too. You ought to learn how to work in a distributed approach with a mission command mindset where leaders you act like gardeners and provide the context, right? So I think that that's my hope is
No, I think you put your finger on it really nicely. I mean, when the printing press came out, as I said, hardly anybody was literate in Europe at that time.
hmm,
But by 1500, there was a lot of literacy. There were 20 million books in circulation, and then we had an explosion of ideas and new thought all through the 1500s and beyond up until now. And so this is going to do exactly the same thing. We co-evolve with our tools. And so now we're going to have an explosion of intelligence, call it natural or artificial intelligence. Or Kristen likes to call it natural intelligence. It's more like digital natural intelligence. It's the same FEP that we're running is now
hmm,
running on the internet. We're going to have access now to, I mean, every 8-year-old girl in the world is going to have access to as much information as the top PhD has today. And so we're going to have generations of smarter, younger people coming up, and it's distributed widely. You can be in Bangladesh, you can be in Alaska, you can be in Greenland, you can be in Brazil. It doesn't really matter. You're going to have access to the same thing. The thing I like to remind people of is you look at somebody like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, they're using the same damn smartphone that a 12-year-old in Morocco is using. I mean,
yeah,
because really the phone is simply a window into the real value, the trillions of dollars of value of the World Wide Web. So the value isn't in the little thing you're holding; it's what it accesses. And so now we're going to have an intelligence web. Oh my God! So you're going to access it with glasses, with headsets, with other kinds of things, and so everybody's going to get. I mean, you come back here in 2100 to talk to a
mhm,
12-year-old girl, and she's going to be like smarter than Carl
yeah.
Friston. I mean, there's just this we're co-evolving with our AI.
So this has got to be a threat to some institutions where they're dependent on centralized control, and maybe some governments out there that may not want to see this because you lose power, right? If you become closer to a real democracy, which this really enables you to do, right? Is create that true democracy. So there's got to be some evil in the world, some pressure from institutions or organizations that may not want this. A question to you: Are you seeing any of that, or nothing at the
Not
moment?
really, no, because the World Wide Web is exactly the same thing. I mean, it democratized information all over the world, and people use it every day all over the world, and all the government agencies realized, oh, we're more efficient when we use this. So it really wasn't it turned out not to be a threat. And maybe if you describe it, hey, here's what's coming. We're going to decentralize information. It's going to be locked in these big libraries at the top universities. We're going to make it available to every man, woman, and child in the
Mm-hmm.
world. Oh my gosh, we're going to lose our power for Oxford or Berkeley
Yeah.
or MIT or whatever. But that wasn't the case. And I think it's the same with this. I think
Okay.
the AI comes in, it makes everybody just so much more efficient, so much more capable, And with superabundance, really the need for control starts to lessen because it's all around scarcity is
Mm.
where all these control functions come in. So we can even loosen up a little bit because the world generally is getting more abundant. If you bring anybody here from 1400, they're going like, how did you guys get so
Yeah.
rich? I mean, my God, what's a car? I mean,
Hmm.
everybody has a car. I mean, it would be the most amazing thing in the world in 1400. And so I think we got probably half the planet into what we would consider historical wealth over the last 500 years. Now, with the age of intelligence, we'll get the other half in as well. And by 2100, we've got a really Star Trek civilization.
Wow. Well, I want to shift the gears a little bit and talk about consciousness. I know that there's a lot of discussion about that around active inference and stuff that Andy Clark talks about as well, and others are talking about it. Um, in your view, based on what you know, will this active inference in next generation AI be conscious, or can it be?
So you're into an area that's really impossible to give a definitive answer to because, for one reason, we don't really honestly have a good definition of consciousness.
Hmm.
And there's two schools of thought right now. One is that consciousness emerged out of matter, and the other is that there is no matter. There's only
Mm.
consciousness. So those two schools now are having a really big discussion because when we keep looking at matter closer and closer and closer, it keeps disappearing. When I look at wood
Hmm.
really closely under a microscope, I can't find wood. I only see
Right.
molecules. And then people go, oh, well, the whole world's made out of molecules. I got it. Oh, no, I look at molecules really closely. They're all atoms. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, the world's all made out of atoms. No, we look at atoms really closely. They're subatomic particles. Then what are subatomic particles? Well, they're magnetic vibrational states.
Vibrations. Yeah.
So yeah, so we're kind of the materialists and the idealists are having a really interesting conversation right now around that. But what we can talk about is intelligence.
Okay.
And so we don't have to talk about consciousness. And so we can talk about intelligence and self awareness, that kind of thing. And then we don't get into the argument is it conscious or not conscious? But certainly by 2030, it's looking like in that region, plus or minus 3 or 4 years. But, it could be somewhere between 27 and 2035. We will probably get to a level of artificial intelligence that everybody would go like, you know, it's just smarter than human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Generally, AGI it's called, and if when that happens, and if it happens, most people in the game believe it's about to happen. That's, that's a big historical moment because it's not stopping there. It's going to continue to grow and take us with it. And so our level of intelligence, if we talk to a Stone Age person, I mean, even a 6-year-old child has more knowledge than a Stone Age man or
Yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
And so it may be that we are the children of our own future parenting. I mean, the adults of 2100 may look at us with total compassion and go like, oh my gosh, those poor people. How did they handle all of their problems with the level of low intelligence they had at that time? We think we're so smart, but relative, it's all relative, right? Come back every 10,000 years and take a check, the average level of IQ keeps rising because the IQ score is all based on the bell curve. So it isn't based on some absolute thing. And so it's like half the people have above a 100 and half the people have a below 100. I mean, but that bell curve middle is moving
To the
forward.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what would have been a 150 in 1800 is probably a 90 today. You
Yeah.
see what I mean?
So you brought up vibrations, and we've looked at cymatics, we looked at sacred geometry on this on this podcast. We know a lot of people that look at that. There's maybe some ideas out there that vibrations and geometry can help us heal. My question to you about this is, with your background and how you look at things, and with this active inference AI, will it be able to look at these wooish things and help us understand them a little bit better?
Well, AI has been helpful in that, in generally. I mean, it can find patterns that we can't see, and so I would imagine that, as you point out, cymatics alone is just amazing. How the forms come out of vibrational states and just change the vibration a little bit. The sand on a plate with vibrations on it, and it takes all these amazing organic forms. I mean, they look a lot like nature.
Hmm.
But I would imagine AI again, like I said, the this new level of AI. LLMs are generally taking what we already know and putting it into a thing, and
Hmm.
then we could query it. But what active inference does, it's got a curiosity quality. It's kind of constantly probing and looking forwards. I think it may help us discover things that you're alluding to
Yeah.
here that are beyond our current science right now. So the science we have today is relative to the science of 2100 as the science of 1800 would be to the science of today. I mean, again,
Yeah.
we're really cutting edge right now compared to anything we've ever been. But I mean, we still don't know what time and space are. I mean, Dr. Donald Hoffman's work at University of California, Irvine on his great book is called The Case Against Reality. I mean, I recommend everybody to read that. So we're probably on the verge of a whole new kind of chapter in science that will emerge on the back of this new renaissance we're
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
So fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be an exciting ride. I mean, I think that's the thing we can look forward to. I think the main message I would have, really, I think, out of these kinds of conversations is uh, we're really heading into a positive future. It doesn't mean there won't be bumps as we transition from the industrial age to the age of intelligence and superabundance. But over the course of the next 20 years or so, we'll kind of figure things out and figure out how we take care of everybody and how we deal with universal incomes and things like that. But we're headed toward an extraordinary future, and that's something I think we all can sign up for. It's something we've been dreaming about, and technology is going to help us as it has historically. I mean, the plow allowed us to grow more food. I mean, these little breakthroughs really open up huge things, and AI is a huge breakthrough. So LLMs will have their role, and active inference will have its role, and humans interacting with them will take the co-evolve all of us over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, hey, I think that's a great place to stop. Before we do that, you brought up books. I just want to ask you, you brought up The Case Against Reality. You got another couple books you want to share with folks that you think are important to read right now? Or what's the top of your reading list?
Well, gee, yeah, that's always a good question. I mean, we kind of started this conversation talking about the power of meditation and how it can free your mind from just the being too narrow thinking. So it broadens it out. So I think any of the great teachers in the meditation traditions, I think, are really valuable. I think looking back to some of the kind of ancient wisdom that has survived more than 1,000 years, whether it's Rumi's poetry and whether it's the Tao Te Ching, things like that, even the Bhagavad Gita, all the great teachings that we've come from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. If we pull out the essence of the values and the teachings and that kind of thing, I mean, you can see what people were struggling with in those days, the Ten Commandments and these kinds of things. How do you build a society that really works well and functions? And so as we even the AI will take all this stuff in and probably help us really build new legal structures and things like that that help us just live together on this planet more effectively and with less violence and more security for everybody. So that's generally a direction I would go. But yeah, books wise, I mean, gosh, I mean, there's just so much great stuff coming out all the time. I mean, gosh, I just can't even put my finger on
Hmm.
all of it. But I do like Donald Hoffman's latest book. Think everybody should read that. It's definitely food for thought. And certainly some of the work that's being done around active inference as well. That's going to be a crucial understanding in terms of careers and inventing things.
I couldn't agree more. Dan Mapes, thank you so much for being here on No Way Out. We'll end it there, but I'll keep you on the call for a few more minutes. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Punch.